Welcome to Using Drones for Archaeology with Team Black. Let's get started. First thing you need to know, drones aren't evil. If you're watching this video, you probably understand that, but if you just happened upon it and you're not really sure, then, they're not evil. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. All right, so we're going to go really briefly over FAA regulations. They are changing so fast for drone stuff that we're not going to go deeply into it. You're going to have to probably take a course if you're not already a certificated pilot and a certificated private pilot or above. You're going to have to take a course, you're going to have to do something, and they will tell you all the current FAA regulations, and then you'll find out ways on how to stay up on that kind of stuff. We'll talk a little bit about the types of drones, just again, a high-level overview, some of the capabilities of those different types of drones, and then a few use cases. So a little bit about me. My name is Chris Webster. I have a Master of Science in Archaeological Resource Management, and I'm a registered professional archaeologist. I was in the U.S. Navy from 93 to 97. I got a BA in anthropology from the University of North Dakota in 2005. Did my field school at Olduvai Gorge that same year. Was mostly a field technician from 2005 to 2009, usually on the East Coast doing shovel testing. You know how it is. I got that MS in the University of Georgia in 2010. And then from then for a couple of years, I was a field tech, crew chief, project manager, different things, moving up the ladder. And then in 2012, it was actually really January of 2013, I started my cultural resource management firm, which is Digital Technologies and Archaeological Consulting, or DigTech. And then in 2014, after running the CRM Archaeology podcast for a while, I started the Archaeology Podcast Network. In 2015, while on a project, I started PCS, which turned into Team Black just a couple of years ago, and I started that around 2015. And I've been with WildNote, a digital management platform, I guess you could say, from 2018. All right, so I've been a FAA private pilot since 1999. I actually went to school first for commercial aviation. I had instrument and commercial training, but because of the way the program works, when I decided to get out of the program and go into anthropology, long story, I hadn't finished the check rides for instrument and commercial because you do them all at once you do your multi-engine training, and I stopped attending those courses before the multi-engine training. Drone Part 107 certificate, that's active. You can check on that. That's what you're going to need to do this commercially. If you're going to fly drones for your company, you're going to need a Part 107 certificate, and that's Part 107 of the FAA regulations. I am in the Civil Air Patrol and Reno Composite Squadron Commander. I'm also, which is not on the slide because it's brand new, as of 2019, the Nevada Wing, and each state is a wing in the Civil Air Patrol, but the Nevada Wing Director of Unmanned Aerial Systems. So I'm in charge of implementing the drone program for the state of Nevada. I have a DJI Inspire Pro 1, and I've flown that and many other smaller drones. The Pro 1 is probably the biggest drone I've flown, the heaviest, and the most capable, but I've flown tons of other stuff. Okay, so first thing you need to know, let's talk about the FAA. This is their website. Your Part 107 certificate without renewal is good for 2 years. You'll have to do some recurrent training, make sure you understand the rules and regulations and things that are changing. I'm surprised it's every 2 years. Things are changing so fast, but once you're in the system, you should get regular emails and even mail telling you that things have changed or there's a new regulation, something like that. So check out faa.gov/UAS until they change that website too, and you'll find the latest. All right, that's literally all we're going to go over on FAA regulations because, as I said, everything is changing really fast and you need to stay on top of it. So let's get into drones. Now, there's lots of different names for drones. UAS is the government term. It's Unmanned Aerial System, but let's just call them drones. We're going to avoid calling them anything else just to avoid confusion. But you need to use the right tool for the right job when you're thinking about these. You have different platforms, which we are going to talk about, and each one of those platforms have different skill levels for flying. Not only that, but also capabilities. So fixed-wing drones are probably something you wouldn't really think of as drones these days, but they are the traditional airplane, like model airplane, but the only difference these days is they can be much easier to fly, and they can be automated. There was no automation for a really long time, and it was really complicated learning how to fly those things. And a lot of times you had to build them and then fly them. My dad went through that, spending months building a fixed wing airplane and then crashing it first time out. That was always fun. It's a higher skill level because you actually have to know how to fly in a lot of cases, like up, down, left, right kind of flying. And they're very unforgiving because with a rotor wing drone, if you just let go of the controls, it'll stop and hover. If you let go of the controls on a fixed wing plane, it's still flying forward. So there's a lot more things you need to learn in order to really figure that out, nail it down, and do it right without crashing it. They tend to have a longer range just because of the nature of how they are. They're bigger. They can fly farther, they can fly faster, and they can often carry more payloads. They're good for large areas, landscape surveys. You wouldn't use one of these to, say, do photogrammetry on a house or a building. But, well, unless that building was like the Tesla factory here in Reno, which is like a half a mile long. That I could see, but they're really good for shooting straight down landscape surveys or LiDAR or something like that over a large area because, as I said, they are fast and they can't cover a lot of ground, so use them for that. Some examples, these are just random examples. By the time you watch this video, these may not even be things that you can buy, but you can see this thing here. It's a super light, they call it the Nova, 90-minute flight time, has a wide wingspan, which if you know anything about aerodynamics, which you'll learn during your 107 training, the bigger wingspan, this is why gliders have a really big wingspan, is so they can essentially create more lift and then use less power to create that lift, so they can have a smaller engine in it. It says it can cover over 1,000 acres in a single automated flight. That's a lot. Here's another one, the Tempest, 1.5 hours. Again, 90 minutes seems to be the standard for this class of drone, I guess. Payload 7 pounds, max wind 60 miles per hour. That's important because it's got to be able to have the power to not only fly into the wind, but also handle a crosswind. So it's got to be able to, turn and crab and do different things to be able to hold its course and fly that straight line. And if it just doesn't have the engine for it, it doesn't have the engine for it. If it doesn't have the weight for it, you'll find that out. It's physics. You'll find that out during your 107 training as well. Now, we're most used to rotor aircraft when we're thinking about drones. And this can be anywhere from basic to advanced. I mean, you can have, honestly, the more expensive drones seem to be easier to fly because their GPS control is so good and they're so stable and they're just really easy to fly. I always recommend people start on something really small and then, something you buy for $20 at the gas station. And then once you learn how to fly that, then you'll build the muscle memory. Don't get one that flies with a phone or something like that. You want one that has a 2-stick controller, basically a 4-channel controller. So you have up, down, left, right, lean left, lean right, lean forward, lean back, and then what's called the collective, basically, or the throttle, up and down. So you learn on that with the idiosyncrasies that those have and correcting for its drift and all that stuff. Then you'll be super ready to go when you go to fly one of the bigger, more expensive ones. These have varying payloads depending on their size. Most of the lighter ones are just carrying a camera, and it's usually a camera that's built into the system unless you got something that's very customizable, but it's usually just a camera. They usually have a shorter battery life because these things are pretty heavy, and they're running 4 rotors, and they're carrying a payload, and when you're standing still, running GPS, holding all that stuff up, that takes a lot of battery life. My Inspire Pro 1 with its 4K camera, in a light wind, it'll last 12 to 15 minutes. In a heavier wind, it's closer to 10 to 13 minutes because it's got to use that the GPS and the motor stability to maintain that course in a windy condition. Good for buildings, small areas, overviews. You can get a little backpack drone like a Mavic or something like that. Pull it out of a small case, throw it up in the air, take site overviews, and bring it right back down. I mean, literally fly it for like 45 seconds. It doesn't need to be complicated. And you get some great actual site overviews. Standing on the edge of an archaeological site and taking a picture out across a 400-meter wide site is no longer something anyone should be doing. We should all be doing site overviews with a drone. All right, some examples. This is your most common example. This is the DJI Phantom. You can buy these used on the market on eBay, Craigslist. I mean, all day long, anywhere from $100 to a few $100s. Brand new, they're over $1,000, but I think they're discontinuing the Phantom line, actually. or at least changing it anyway. But DJI is really good because it's out of the box. They are having some issues right now as I'm recording this in early June of 2019 because they're a Chinese company, and all government agencies, U.S. government agencies, have stopped using DJI products because it appears as though some location information and probably some telemetry data are actually available for the Chinese company to see through the DJI Go app. Now, I'm not really sure how that works if you're using another app, because you don't necessarily need to use the DJI Go app to run it. Often you use it to start it and do your pre-flight checkup, but then you can use other applications to see and control the drone. So maybe that's the way to go. Check that out. Here's another one. This is the one I have, except this is the newer version. This is the Inspire 2. Mine's not cool black and, gray or silver, but it's white. And this one has obstacle avoidance, upward obstacle avoidance, which means you can't come up into something, which is a problem because your camera can't even see up there, but also object avoidance around it as well, and then terrain detection going down. So that's pretty amazing. It says accurate indoor hovering and positioning, which is really great. It's using that obstacle avoidance camera to probably do that. Flying indoors is something you may consider when you're doing the inside of a building or something like that. It's still a really great tool for photogrammetry. Here's one that holds a bigger camera. This one says capability with multiple cameras. This is the Matrice. The Matrice for the DJI line has 6 rotors. This one has 6 rotors. So the more rotors you have, the more weight you're going to be able to hold. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to fly it longer. A lot of times the heavier payload is what's sucking up that extra big battery life. So when you've got that heavier payload, it's still down to 15, maybe 20 minutes on some of the higher end ones with a slightly bigger battery. And I think that's going to get more intelligent as we go along. Here's another one, the Unique. That's also very popular amongst commercial applications. 4K HD video, just a really great multi-rotor, 6-rotor drone. And you can see it's got a retractable landing gear. So some capabilities I've already mentioned. Side overview photos. You take some of those smaller ones. Again, I like the Mavic for windier conditions because it's a heavy drone, but it's small, and weight is the most important factor when combating the wind, because the lighter stuff will just get blown around, whereas the heavier stuff, it takes more wind to blow them around. I mean, look at a 737 on approach to runway versus a Cessna 182. The Cessna might be all over the place, but the 737 is rock solid because it takes a lot more wind to move that much weight. Taking feature photos, and I don't mean like a small feature sitting in front of you, but sometimes out here in Nevada we have big mining features, things like that. We really just can't get a good overview of these. I don't think anyone's ever had a picture of the roof of a mining structure because you just can't get up there. So if you have a drone, you can take these photos really simply and really easily. And you'd probably only need to carry maybe 4 or 5 batteries with you, and you can distribute those around the crew if you're taking a lot of photos throughout the day. I'd be willing to bet your average use case is 2 to 3 batteries a day. Amazing site videos. Again, why stop at photographs? Why don't think inside the box, think outside the box, think outside the site boundary, and do some really cool fly-through type imagery, because chances are no one's ever going to see this again. If it's a CRM project, it could be destroyed if it's not eligible or worth saving. So do some stuff like that so we can have a better picture of what the site looks like. Of course, photogrammetry. And if you don't know what that is, taking a series of photographs in multiple orientations to stitch together essentially a 3D model, a model that's measurable in space in 3 dimensions. And super easy to do with drones. But again, even a small site will probably suck up the entire battery of the drone to do that, because you need to take a lot of photographs, and you probably should automate it. You don't have to, but you probably should learn how to automate that so it takes the photos with that overlap that you need and get it done efficiently. Landscape photogrammetry and analysis. Again, this is doing photogrammetry, but doing it on a landscape level, not just like a building or something like that. And that's really important because you may notice things once you get the photogrammetric analysis complete, and you can turn on like a terrain model or something. And it's not quite LiDAR, but there is ways to just kind of look at the terrain and see maybe you missed some features or something like that, and there's stuff that just comes out. And again, of course, landscape survey. You can do small-scale landscape survey with the fixed-wing drones. Mine's got a 1 mile, actually a 1 to 2 mile range on the radio. However, if I send that thing out a mile to take pictures and a mile to come back, that's going to kill the battery. So if you had a really wide area, if you got like a road or something and you wanted to go out and then come back and do the road, that's fine. But if you've got a big wide area, it's going to have to do multiple passes because it's getting 100% survey coverage. Then you're probably going to want a fixed wing drone. Again, we talked about some use cases, but let's go over it again. Pedestrian survey, safety and overviews. So what I mean by this is, there's little reason to do pedestrian survey in open landscape anymore. There's no reason why we can't send like a drone team out first in most cases and do like a high level overview survey of the area, and then maybe send archaeologists out to some of the hit areas. Because when we do survey, we're doing about a 5 to 10% survey sample, and it's most likely around 5% when you're doing a 25 to 30 meter wide transect. So we're not seeing everything. And a drone, while it might miss things, is going to see more because it's doing 100% of the survey. So while it might miss some of the smaller things, it's catching the big stuff, and it's catching the stuff that is the big reasons why we're out there. So, sending the crew out to do maybe a limited survey, maybe increase that to 50 meters or something, just to get an idea of what's out there and what the landscape looks like, and then sending the drone crews out there to do their 100% survey. It's safer. I mean, I've done surveys where there were snakes and bombs all over the place, and if we didn't have to have people out there, I would rather not have people out there. So that's one way to look at that. And then, of course, overviews of the area, overviews of sites. As again, I mentioned pre-survey area assessment. This is going to cost you a little bit extra money, but I think it would save time and money in the long run to send drones out there and send the crews out there to just run a few, spend like a week, depending on the size, and just run over the area, maybe sample it, and then come back, process the data, and let the field crews have that. Then you would have high accurate maps for your GPSs as well to put in the background. Again, area surveys, best suited for fixed wing drones, but doing the entire survey by drone, we're getting to the point where that could actually be a thing. And I want people that are using drones to think about that. Okay, so if there's any questions, you can email me, Chris Webster at digtech-llc.com. There's a lot of room in this space for innovation, and I want people to think outside the box here. These have cameras on them, and people are limiting their thinking to the same types of photos that we're taking now with regular cameras. And I want you to think about different uses, different things you could do with those pictures, with the photogrammetry, different equipment you could stick on the bottom of there to do different things. Where we're not just adding to what we're doing, we're in some cases enhancing or replacing things that we're doing. So think about that as well. This doesn't need to be an add-on cost specifically. It can evolve our workflows and change our workflows. So, all right, again, that was Chris Webster at digtech-llc.com. Thanks for watching.